She thought it was just another day at work, a cleaning job, nothing unusual. But behind closed doors, a cruel joke was being planned. A wealthy man invited her, not out of respect, but to mock her very existence. What he did not expect was that this so-called joke would turn into the biggest shock of his life. She walked in carrying more than just dignity. She carried the power to silence an entire room. How does a woman's society tries to humiliate end up leaving everyone speechless? For years, Amina lived in the quiet shadows of other people's homes. She scrubbed their floors, polished their silver, and made their grand spaces shine. Yet to many, she was invisible. A black cleaning lady in a wealthy neighborhood, known only by her uniform and the quiet efficiency of her work. She never asked for recognition, only respect. But respect was the one thing she rarely received. Still, Amina carried herself with quiet pride, saving what little she earned to support her family, dreaming of a better life. Her world was simple, predictable, until the day a strange invitation arrived. The address belonged to one of the wealthiest estates in the city, a sprawling mansion where only the elite gathered. It felt unusual, even suspicious. But work was work, and Amina couldn't afford to turn it down. What she didn't need to know was that her next job wouldn't just test her skills. It would test her dignity in front of an audience that never expected to see her shine. Amina arrived at the mansion just as the evening lights began to glow. The driveway stretched like a river of stone, lined with luxury cars gleaming under the lamps. Every step she took seemed to echo the difference between her world and theirs. Inside, chandeliers glittered, and laughter filled the air. The wealthy guests were dressed in silks and jewels, glasses of champagne in hand. But when the doors opened and Amina stepped inside, the mood shifted. Their eyes darted toward her, not with welcome, but with ridicule. What she didn't know was that the host had set a trap. He told his friends he had invited the help as entertainment, a joke to prove a point, that no matter how hard people like her worked, they'd always remain outsiders. The guests smirked, eager to witness her humiliation. The host greeted her loudly, his voice dripping with false charm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, "our special guest has arrived." A ripple of cruel laughter moved through the room. To them, she was a punchline. But Amina felt the weight of every whisper, every sneer. She knew what they saw, a cleaning lady who didn't belong. Yet inside, she carried something they could never take: her pride, her history, her unshakable strength. As she stood in that room, the tension thickened. The humiliation was sharp, cutting deeper with every chuckle. It was a battle not of fists or words, but of dignity versus cruelty. And though the odds were against her, Amina refused to bow her head. The crowd waited for her to falter, to shrink under their gaze, but what happened next would shatter their expectations. The host raised his glass, grinning. "From rags to riches for one night only," he sneered. The room erupted in laughter, cruel and merciless. Amina's chest tightened. Her hands trembled. For a heartbeat, she felt crushed beneath the weight of their hatred. But then she thought of her children. She thought of the countless years she had endured insults, the hours of labor no one respected, the sacrifices no one noticed. And she realized she would not let them win. Not tonight. With steady steps, Amina moved toward the center of the room. The marble floor amplified each sound of her heels, silencing the laughter bit by bit. She lifted her chin, her posture transforming in an instant. Her presence filled the hall. She didn't need jewels or gowns. Her dignity was her crown. The guests froze. Their smirks slipped. Their glasses hung midair. The host's grin faltered as unease crept into his eyes. The joke had collapsed. The spectacle had backfired. What was meant to strip her down had instead lifted her higher. In that moment, Amina wasn't the help. She wasn't their joke. She was a queen in a room full of cowards, and every person there felt it. The silence that followed was deafening, but what she did next would leave them shaken forever. Amina left the mansion without a word. She didn't need to explain herself. The silence she left behind spoke volumes. The host lowered his glass, embarrassed, his power undone. Guests looked away, ashamed to have been part of something so cruel. For Amina, the night was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming her voice in a world that tried to erase it. She had walked into that mansion as a target for humiliation, but she walked out as a symbol of resilience. Her story, though, was not unique. For every Amina, there are countless others who face the same invisible battles, mocked, excluded, told they don't belong. The cruelty may not always come with laughter in a ballroom. Sometimes it comes in whispers at work, in doors that never open, in opportunities denied before they even begin. Amina's strength turned one night of cruelty into a lesson that no one in that mansion would forget. But outside those walls, the question still lingers. How many more lives will be scarred by the quiet violence of racism before we decide enough is enough? Her silence that night stopped the laughter. But will it stop the world from repeating the same cruelty tomorrow? Or will it take 1,000 more voices before humanity finally listens? If Amina's story moved you, don't let it fade. Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe so more voices can be heard. Together, let's make sure stories like this are never ignored again.